everyone, it's Julia. I belong to a quilt club, and every year we do a quilt challenge. And this is our challenge for this year. I haven't started it yet, and I probably have about 3 months left before we're going to do our reveal. But I want to get a start on it, and I want to take you along for the journey. If any of you follow my channel for a while, I don't do a lot of quilting, but I do a lot of more creative wall hanging type things or creative projects. So this is somewhat new to me, but I'm really excited. I love a challenge. So this is what our rules and regulations are for this. Everyone will pull out one paint color chip. The size of the quilt can be as small as 12 by 12 or as large as 30 by 30 or any combination in between. The quilt contains 3/4 of the colors on the paint chip and up to the total amount. Fabrics can be solid or tone on tone. The quilt can be hand appliqued or machine appliqued. Embellishing, beading, or a mixed media of applique and machine piecing is also acceptable. You are allowed to add one contrasting or complementary color plus neutral colors such as black, white, or tan. The paint chip used to pick the colors of the quilt must be shown with the quilt. It does not need to be attached to the quilt, but will be displayed alongside of the quilt at the reveal. So those are my instructions, and I'm going to share with you the paint chip that I drew. We're working with pink. I've been on Pinterest looking for different ideas, and I found a picture that is going to be my inspiration. I'm going to insert it here. It's a floral with a vase, and I think it's going to be fun to work with. And I have some ideas. And so anyway, I'm going to share with you my fabric that I have found. I've been kind of collecting the fabric all summer long. So this is what I'm working with. Some dark, some lights, another neutral. So my neutral is going to be more of just an off-white fabric, and my contrasting is going to be the green that I'm going to use for the leaves. My thought is I am going to piece the background and applique the vase and the flowers on top of the pieced background. And like I said, I'm a pretty beginner as far as piecing goes, but I think I'm going to do the disappearing 9 patch for the back. I'm going to see how it goes. I'm thinking just 2 blocks vertically. This is going to be definitely a vertical design, and I might be adding some borders just to give it a little bit more width. And so anyway, that's what I'm working with. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you come along for the ride. Let's get started. I'm going to cut my patches for my blocks for the background, and I think I'm going to use 5-inch blocks for it. And so I'm going to cut those, and then I'll come back. I do have my first 9 patch laid out. I'm going to be taking it to my sewing machine and stitching this. I'm taking a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am just going to fold the middle to the left so I don't get these mixed up, and put a pin in each one. And then I'll be back. I have each section sewn together, and now it's to sew my rows. So I'm just going to, I have everything pressed to nestle these, making sure that my seams are in the proper spot, and then sticking a pin in this. And I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and sew my rows. This is the layout for my second block for my background. I wanted to take a minute and just say that I realize that a lot of this background you won't even see. A lot of it's going to be covered up. It's just kind of the way a background is, especially when if you ever do any mixed media art or anything, you work on the background and you put layers and layers, and then a lot of times it's covered up, but it's just the process, and you don't really know what little piece of it's going to be, you know, showing. And so I'm going to be doing the 2 blocks. I do realize that a lot of it will be covered up. Also, I kind of want to add some stenciling to this piece. It has a real faint design on it, but I thought I do have an ink pad that's similar to the shade that I need, the red. This is called the red geranium, and this is archival ink made by Ranger. It is permanent and it is waterproof, and so I love using this when I'm working with any kind of fabrics. I don't know if this is ever going to be washed, but you know, it is nice to know that it is permanent. And another thing, I'll link this down below for you, and I will be using a makeup brush for it, and I'll link that down below. The stencil that I'm using was gifted to me, and I don't have the information on it, but again, it's just like a random background type stencil. And I'll link the products that I have. I'll link down below, and I forgot to mention, I'll also link that Pinterest picture so you can take a look at that. I want to, you know, certainly give her a shout out on that. And I think what I'm going to do is just, the stencil is going to be perfect because I won't have to move it. It's going to cover this whole piece. Just going to pick up a little bit of the ink. Try to hold it so it doesn't move. Yeah, I think that's going to work. It did mention in our rules that we could use mixed media. You could do, you know, embellishing or that type of thing is allowed. So I thought I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go on and continue the other 3. I have my second block laid out, and so similar to the first block, I'm just flipping these over, pinning, and then we'll take this to my sewing machine and get it sewed. My blocks are sewed together, and now for the disappearing 9 patch. I'm creasing. I'm in both directions, right in the middle. And then we'll be cutting right on that crease line. So right down the middle, in both directions. And for the fun part, you can just kind of fiddle around with however you want these to lay. There's a lot of different combinations that you can do. And I'm going to share with you on my design board what I came up with. I mixed the different 2 blocks, and then I also added a border on the sides. I'm not going to add a border on the top or the bottom. I think it's long enough, but I needed a little bit more width, and so I am just going to add a little bit of a border. I think it's 2.5 by the 5 inches on each one of these, and then I'll be stitching that together. Drew out the vase on just a piece of freezer paper and a couple of the leaves shapes on some graph paper that I'm going to use. I don't have enough of my Steam-A-Seam 2 for the vase, so I am going to just trace this onto just a piece of Heat and Bond Light. And then the leaves I'm going to do on the Steam-A-Seam 2 so that I can reposition them and figure out where I want them on my overall design. And I think I'm going to do maybe eight of each of the different sized leaves. So I'm going to get busy with that. And again, I'm just going to be tracing this on the, probably scoot this underneath. Nope, I'll have to trace it on the top. Just hold it in, hold it kind of tight, and then trace around this. And I'm also going to do the leaves, and then I'll be back. I'm pressing the pot on the back side now of my fabric. Just giving it a good press, and then doing the same with my leaves. Now this is that Steam Seam 2, so it's 2 layers of tissue, or tissue on the top, and then the adhesive is on this base or the grid side of this paper, and that is what I'm going to iron or press on to my back of my fabric, and then just cutting around those shapes. I'm starting to make my flowers for my quilt top, and I decided that I want them to be dimensional, and the leaves in the vase are going to be flat. And so what I'm going to do is I'm using my Sizzix Big Shot to cut my circles, and I have the circle number 2. I don't know if this is still available. It may be offered on eBay, but it does have 4 different size circles on it. And I just have some of the same fabrics and several layers. I can cut up to about 4 layers with this at a time. And I do have a piece of cardstock on top of this just as a little shim. This particular, I've used this so much, this Big's die, that it is getting a little dull. But I'm running it through. And then you can see some of them catch just in one little spot. So I'm having to cut just a little thread there. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut these all out, and then I'm going to share with you my idea on how to layer these. All my flowers are cut out and I have them sorted by size, and now I'm just picking up each layer, and is going to be a different color. So I'm just stacking these. And then my final layer is going to be a piece of the quilt batting. I want the flowers to be just a tad bigger. And so I'm just going to be cutting around so a little bit of that batting shows. And I have about 20 of these flowers made, and so I'm going to be working with approximately 20 flowers. I just laid everything out on my background just to get an idea of what it's going to look like. And so far, I think it's going to be okay. I thought it was going to be just an overpowering pink, but the green really helps. And a little bit of the background still shows, which I'm happy about. I don't even have the paper removed on the back of my appliques yet. I think my next step is I'm going to make my sandwich. I'm going to get my batting and my backing together, and then I'll be ironing on the pot and the leaves first. And I think I'm going to quilt that portion before I put the flowers back on. And I think that's going to be my next step, is making my sandwich. I wanted to make a note, because I'm using Steam Seam 2 on the back of these leaves. When you iron onto the project, you're going to want to use a lot of steam. It's just the way it is with the Steam Seam 2. If it has that tackiness, which is a wonderful, temporary adhesive, so you can move things around if you need, but you have to have the steam to dissolve that adhesive. And if you don't get enough steam, you're going to forgot the paper on this one. You're going to have to you're going to get gumming of your needle and thread breaking, and it is just a pain. If you do notice when you're stitching that you're having problems with your needle gumming, take it back to your ironing board and use more steam. I wanted to mention too that I am going to be using a fusible fleece. So the adhesive is up, and I'm just going to get that ironed on. My sandwich is made. I am going to use the musical note fabric for the back of it. And here's that original picture, and I love that design in the vase, and mine's not going to be the same. I don't have that same fabric, but I am going to add some detail to my pot or my vase. I felt it was a little bit flat, this fabric, and so I have another stencil, and I'm just using a heat erase pen, and you can't see it, but I am just tracing tracing some of these little flowers in this vase, and that's going to be my stitching line for my quilting line when I do some detail on this pot. I'm to my sewing machine now, and I want to, first of all, before I start, get my bobbin thread up. So I just lowered my needle and pulled that bobbin thread. Then I'm going to lower my presser foot and stitch over that a couple times, and then I'm going to clip my thread. Now I'm going to free motion stitch this. So my feed dogs are dropped, and I do have my quilting foot on, and I'm just going to trace these little flowers that I just drew on. I have a very light pink thread on both the top and my bobbin. I'm going to try not to break my threads at all. I'm just going to do a couple more stitches to tie that, and then I'm just traveling with that thread over to the next flower. I will clip my threads when I do this traveling, just so that I don't continue to stitch over them. And then tracing this flower. When all my flowers are traced on all my appliques, I am going to edge stitch. So I'm just stitching the edge of this pot, and I went around it twice. And the leaves too, I'm going to go around twice. And then I'm going to draw in some of the detail in the leaves. I'm just going to meander stitch in between the leaves, and that's how I'm going to quilt in between those leaves. And this particular leaf, I'm just doing a little bit of a different design in the center of it. Now for these flowers, everything is stitched on, all my appliques are stitched on, and my background is all machine quilted. And I'm just arranging these flowers, not thinking too much about them. I did want some of that darker circled center scattered throughout. So I do move them a little bit, and I also want, some to kind of fall down on the pot and some to be way up high. I used all of them. I thought I'd have some extras, but I just put them all in there. And then when I figured out where I wanted them, I'm just going to put a pin in the center of each of them. And then it's back to my sewing machine. Again, I'm drawing up my bobbin thread. And then doing a couple little stitches in the middle, and then going around and around. I don't catch all of the little layers because I do want them to kind of curl and crinkle a little bit and just have a dimensional look to them. And then I am just traveling with my thread from one to another. And then clipping as I go. And we'll be continuing on. And this is a finished look. I didn't show the binding, but I bound it with the same fabrics. It is a scrappy. I didn't have enough fabric of one particular one, so I did piece the binding. I really think it has a great look to it, though. I love the binding like that. Very pleased with how this turned out. You can see the paint chip there that I was working on, and the backing. It's a really fun look to it. Here's a couple more pictures. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm excited for it. Have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.